$1 million does not change your life the way you think it does. And I say that not to diminish it. $1 million is a genuinely significant financial milestone that most people in the world will never reach. I say it because the story most people carry about what $1 million means is so far from the mathematical reality that chasing it as a concept rather than understanding it as a number can actually lead you to make worse decisions along the way. There are people sitting on $1 million net worth right now who feel no different than they did at 800,000. And there are people who hit 1 million and immediately felt it evaporate because they didn't understand what the number actually does and doesn't do for a living. My name is Anderson, and today I want to tell you the truth about $1 million, what it actually provides, what it doesn't, what it changes, and what it leaves entirely untouched. Let's start with the number most people never do. Let's figure out what $1 million is actually worth as income. Because here's the thing about $1 million that the fantasy version skips over entirely. You can't spend $1 million. Not really. Not if you want it to last. What you can do, what financially literate people do, is live off the returns that $1 million generates while leaving the principal intact. And those returns, using the widely accepted 4% withdrawal rule, amount to $40,000 a year. $40,000 a year before taxes. That's the income $1 million portfolio reliably sustains without depleting the principal over a 30-year retirement. $40,000. In many cities, that's below median household income. It's a comfortable, modest life in lower cost of living areas. It is not, by most standards, a wealthy life in the way the word million suggests. And yet this is what the number actually delivers when you translate it from a fantasy into a function. Now, I'm not telling you this to discourage you from building toward $1 million. Quite the opposite. I'm telling you this because understanding the real math changes how you approach the journey, and it changes what you build toward beyond it. What $1 million actually changes? Here's what $1 million genuinely, meaningfully does to a life, and it's more important than most people realize, even if it's quieter than the fantasy. It eliminates a specific kind of fear. There's a background anxiety that most working people carry, a low hum of financial vulnerability that lives just below the surface of everyday life. The awareness that a serious illness, a job loss, a market downturn, or a family emergency could undo years of progress in a matter of months. That feeling is not irrational. It's a mathematically accurate reading of most people's financial position, and $1 million properly invested, properly structured, makes that fear go away in a way that no smaller number quite manages. At $100,000, you're stable but not insulated. At $250,000, you're building real optionality. But at $1 million, properly allocated across diversified assets, you have reached what financial planners sometimes call the dignity threshold, the point at which money stops being a source of daily stress and becomes a quiet, steady foundation beneath everything else you do. That's not nothing. In fact, I'd argue it's the most underrated change that $1 million produces. Not a lifestyle upgrade, not a Ferrari. A fundamental shift in the psychological texture of daily life. The decisions you make when you're afraid are different from the decisions you make when you're secure. Your career decisions change. Your relationship decisions change. Your health decisions change. Security doesn't just feel different, it produces different outcomes. What $1 million doesn't change. Now let's talk about the part the internet skips. $1 million does not change your habits. Whatever relationship you have with money at 500,000, you will have at 1 million. People who overspend at 200,000 don't become disciplined at 1 million. They become people who overspend from a larger number. The behavioral patterns that got you there or didn't don't get automatically rewritten by a balance sheet milestone. Research from the National Endowment for Financial Education suggests that a significant portion of lottery winners, people who receive sudden, large windfalls, end up in financial distress within a few years. Not because $1 million isn't enough, because the habits and frameworks that manage money never changed. $1 million also doesn't change your identity unless you do that work separately. And this is subtle but important. many people chase the million not as a financial goal, but as a psychological one. They're looking for the feeling that will arrive when the number finally confirms something about them, that they made it, that they're safe, that they're different now. And when the number arrives and that feeling doesn't, the disorientation can be significant. The million is a milestone on a path, not a destination that resolves who you are. The people who experience it most fully are the people who already understood that before they got there. The real threshold, why 2 million changes more than one. Here's where the math gets genuinely interesting and where the goal starts to look different. At $1 million, the 4% withdrawal rule gives you $40,000 a year. At 1.5 million, it gives you $60,000. At 2 million, it gives you $80,000, which, in many parts of the country, represents a genuinely comfortable life with margin to spare. At 2.5 million, you're at $100,000 a year in passive income. At that number, work becomes optional rather than obligatory for most people. That is the line most financial planners actually mean when they talk about financial independence, even if they don't always say it directly. So, why does the financial content world obsess over 1 million as though it's the final answer? Because 1 million is a psychologically satisfying round number that makes for good thumbnails and titles, including this one, to be fair. But if you're building a serious financial plan, the more useful question isn't, how do I reach 1 million? It's, what annual income do I actually need to live the life I want, and what portfolio size produces that income at 4% withdrawal? Work backwards from the income, not forwards from the round number. If you need $60,000 a year to live comfortably, your target is 1.5 million. If you need $80,000, it's 2 million. If you need 100,000, it's 2.5 million. These are real, achievable numbers for someone investing consistently over a working career, and they're more honest targets than the $1 million myth that gets recycled across every platform every week. If this is shifting how you think about the number, hit the like button. It takes 2 seconds and it genuinely helps the channel reach people who need to hear this. How long it actually takes and what the journey produces? Someone investing $1,000 a month consistently, earning a 7% average annual return, reaches $1 million in approximately 30 years. At $1,500 a month, they get there in roughly 25 years. At $2,000 a month, approximately 22 years. These timelines feel long until you understand what's happening along the way, because the journey to 1 million doesn't just produce $1 million. It produces the financial intelligence, emotional discipline, and behavioral frameworks that make the million durable once it arrives. The person who builds to 1 million through 30 years of consistent investing is almost never the person who burns through it, because the building process itself was the education. The shortcut version, the windfall, the sudden income spike, the viral business often doesn't include that education. And without it, $1 million is just a large number sitting in an account waiting to be mismanaged. The journey is not a tax you pay to get the result. The journey is a significant portion of the result, the psychological shift that actually matters. There's a moment somewhere on the path, not at 1 million, usually earlier, where the relationship with money fundamentally changes. It happens when your portfolio's annual return exceeds your annual contribution. When the money you have starts earning more than the money you're adding. For someone with $500,000 at 7% return, the portfolio earns $35,000 a year. If they're contributing $2,000 a month, $24,000 a year, the portfolio is now out-earning their contributions by $11,000. That's the inflection point. That's when money stops feeling like something you're building and starts feeling like something that's working. That shift, not the $1 million balance, but the moment passive growth exceeds active contribution, is what financially secure people describe when they say everything changed. Most people experience it somewhere between $400,000 and $700,000, depending on their contribution rate. The million is just the visible downstream result of a shift that already happened. 3 things you can do this week. The first, calculate your actual financial independence number. Take the annual income you'd need to live comfortably, not luxuriously, not austerely, comfortably, and multiply it by 25. That's your real target. It might be 1 million. It might be 2 million. It might be 1.3 million. Know your number, not someone else's. The second, find out when your portfolio return will exceed your annual contribution. Take your current portfolio value and multiply by 0.07. If that number is already larger than what you contribute annually, you've already crossed the inflection point. If not, you now know exactly what portfolio size gets you there. The third, audit the habits, not the balance. The question isn't whether you're on track to 1 million. The question is whether the financial behaviors you're running right now would sustain 1 million if you had one. If the answer is uncertain, that's where the real work is. Back to where we started. $1 million doesn't arrive with a soundtrack. There's no ceremony. The number crosses the threshold on a Tuesday, and Wednesday looks the same as Monday, except for something quiet that's changed underneath everything. What changed is the fear. The low hum of financial vulnerability that most people live with so constantly they've stopped noticing it, that's what goes quiet. Not because $1 million makes you immune to life, but because $1 million, properly understood and properly built, means that life's disruptions have somewhere to land without destroying everything you've worked for. That's what the number actually buys. Not the yacht in the fantasy, not the $40,000 a year in the spreadsheet, the quiet, the security, the ability to make decisions from a different psychological place than most people ever get to stand. It's worth building toward, it's worth understanding accurately, and it's worth knowing that the version of you who gets there is built by the same daily decisions that everyone else is also choosing, just followed through consistently long enough for the math to do what it was always going to do. If you want more of this, subscribe, new video every week, and I'd rather it find you than miss you. My name is Anderson. I'll see you in the next one.